General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Broadcasting on AM 920, The Answer in Atlanta, Georgia, this is Make America Think Again with your social media removed, AOL banned, Comcast censored, and Google blacklisted host, Tom Trento.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
Get under a workbench or other piece of sturdy furniture. If no shelter is available, lie flat in the nearest ditch. Cover your head with your hands.
All right. Good afternoon, Atlanta, Georgia. It is the 2nd of January, 2020. That means only 3 days until the center of the universe for the past month and a half has been Georgia because of this ongoing battle, a battle where hundreds of millions of dollars have been poured into the little tiny state, the peach state of Georgia, hundreds of millions of dollars of ads from Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue on the Republican side. The Reverend Raphael, I can't call this guy a reverend. I happen to be a theologian, a Christian theologian. Raphael Warnock, the fraud, and John Ossoff, the boy trust fund baby. Anyway, we have a great show for you today. We have two experts that we reserved for this day, a couple of days before the election, so that any of you still trying to make up your mind can have actionable information from which to make an intelligent decision to select the right person. All right, let me introduce first two dear friends. One, Kevin Jackson. Kevin is well-known, used to be, before he got into trouble, used to be an analyst on the Fox network, has his own network, the Blacksphere, has a daily radio show, has written several books, and is never at a loss for words. Good afternoon, Kevin Jackson.
Happy New Year to you, buddy.
Yeah, wasn't it great? Just a couple of days ago, yesterday, I guess. Man, time is flying. Kevin, have you been keeping your eye on Georgia and what's going on there?
Yeah, it's a shame that we are at a position right now after looking at everything that happened with what I call the big cheat of Donald Trump and getting his day on November the 3rd, that we're faced with a Senate race that probably suffers from potentially some of the same issues that came up in this one, in the presidential election. And now we find ourselves fighting for our conservative lives. And what I believe a state like Georgia is completely red. But how are we at this razor thin margin of, where we don't know where this thing's going to go? And, some people look at the black vote. Trump carried a lot of the black vote, so you would think there'd be some carryover from that. The evangelical vote certainly came out in the election when you look at the number of votes that Trump got in over his 2016 numbers, something like 16 million that we know of, and I estimate it's probably closer to 20 million new votes. So we've rallied a lot of the troops, and the question is, what else do we have to do? I think as conservatives, it's a very simple thing. We've got to stand our ground. And Georgia has sadly become that battleground where Pelosi kept the House, the presidency is still in question, and Georgia's going to make that decision. And if these guys can get the truly the big cheat where they get the House, the Senate, and the presidency, America as we know it will change dramatically.
Yeah, Kevin, you're a Christian. I want to dive into in a little bit the background of Reverend Warnock, and we also have with us another dear friend of yours, Kevin. We have Trevor Loudon, again a prolific author, a New Zealand who is taking up residence here in our great state of Florida, which is wonderful. We've done a lot of work with Trevor. Happens to be an expert on analyzing the political philosophy of some of the folks in the United States Congress, some of those that have more a leftist, like total Marxist communist background. And so we're going to get into that with Trevor. Trevor, your opening statement to those in Atlanta listening right now about them walking into that booth, if they're voting in person, and considering voting for Warnock and Ossoff. What is your initial, if you are allowed by voting rules, when they go to push those two buttons, to scream and yell at them to stop them, what will you tell them?
I'd say if you vote for those two, you're voting for China and its dominance of the United States. That's pure and simple. Both of these guys are Marxists. Both of them are backed by pro-Chinese communists, and they are pulling a major scam to give themselves total power in America. And it all comes down to the good people of Georgia.
All right. Well, let's take a look at. Normally, for my listening audience here, AM 920, The Answer, Salem Media Communications. Tom Trento, your host. Normally, I have Susie Gold. Are you here? Are you standing in for?
Well, I'm not Susie Gold, though.
Oh, okay. Mark came out of the control room. Susie was not able to be with us today, sadly. She'll be back, but you're here.
Yes, I am.
Good. Normally we have a format of edutainment. We include a little bit of entertainment in our content, but it's so critical. I mean, the race has been. You look at the polls, a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's really a very, very tight race. Right. Over 1.5 million absentee ballots being returned, tremendous fraud. So we're going to focus on content today. Trevor, let's get into. You're going to sketch out the Marxist component of Warnock, and then Kevin, I want you to bring in the Black liberation theology element of Warnock. And I'm telling the audience, we're trying to scare you away from voting for these guys because, as Trevor said, you're voting for China or you're voting for Malcolm X, one of the two. So, Trevor, sketch out the Marxist-China relationship with Warnock.
Well, Warnock was mentored by a man called Calvin Butts, and he's a pastor from the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. But that guy has been involved with the Communist Party for many years. People like Ruby Dee and Ozzie Davis. He's been to Cuba with James Cone, the father of Black liberation theology, and Reverend Jeremiah Wright, too, by the way, Obama's pastor. So they went to Cuba where they met with Fidel Castro. But Butts is very problematic. Back in the day, this guy openly admits that he attacked Atlanta with Molotov cocktails, that he attempted to burn down a church, and that he terrorized white people in cars. This is Calvin Butts, the Marxist who mentored Raphael Warnock. Now, since that time, Warnock has been heavily involved in the New Georgia Project, which is part of a network of voter registrations organizations around America, which is run out of the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco. And that is a front for the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party wants to destroy Trump and completely destroy the Republican Party and set up a socialist, Marxist, revolutionary state in America. So what they've deliberately done is use Warnock and Stacey Abrams to basically manipulate communities in southern states, mobilize them against the GOP. And I'm not a shill for the GOP here, but what they're doing is they want to institute a one-party state in America that's very friendly to communist China. And Reverend Warnock is a big part of that network.
All right, Kevin, we're listening to Trevor, who has amazing expertise in this. We have a couple of clips we're going to play in the next segment. I got about a minute left in this segment, Kevin. Translate what Trevor just said to the guy on the street in Atlanta.
The quick translation is the left and the Communist Party have always used blacks to do their bidding for them. And if blacks buy into it, they're going to be stooges again, because technically they no longer need their vote. Once this is complete, it's not about the vote. It's like when I spent time in China, you would talk to the Chinese and say, hey, you just got a new prime minister. And they were like, who is it? I don't even know. I don't know. I don't care. Go, why? They said, because I have no effect on it. I have no impact on it. There's nothing I can do to change whoever gets assigned. And that's where we're going to find ourselves. And black folks, We look at it and go, oh, yeah, we're getting so much and the Democratic Party's provided this, but we complain about it because at the end of the day, we aren't getting anything. So it's a real, conundrum as to why do we do it. But this is the last time they're going to have to do it. But Trevor's right on most of the points. There's a couple of things I would differ on. But for the most part, he's exactly right. We've been infiltrated. We've been taught to think like communists. They use reverends to do it as part of the old Negro project from the eugenicists, and they keep a lot of people in order. I think we bucked the system a little bit in this last election, and that scared the heck out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Donald Trump got obviously more black people, more people of any color, Asians, Latinos, than Democrats, than Republicans had gotten in the past, which was a significant development, which may be because it was being predicted that was going to happen. That could have put the Democrat fraud machine into gear to say we got to select and pick unique counties and unique ways to flip this thing over. All right, gentlemen, we got to take a break, and then we're going to come back. We got a couple of video clips we're going to play for you. Calvin Butts, we have Warnock doing a eulogy. Ladies and gentlemen, Atlanta, we got Warnock doing a eulogy for, you're not going to guess, but you hang in there. We're going to be right back after these commercials.
Hi, I'm Sam Sorbo, and I have a message for Georgians, particularly Christians. Christians vote their values, folks. And I want you Georgians to vote your values and not your skin color. Remember, Martin Luther King said,
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
We need Georgia. We need you guys. So please vote for the content of character, not the color of a person's skin. Hi, I'm Sam Sorbo. I want to send a special message to all you Christians in Georgia. We need you to vote. We need to show up at the polls to make people understand that we have a voice. And I know some of you are sitting there saying, well, it didn't work last time. Why bother? It will work this time if we show up in droves. And I want you guys to stay at the polls. I want you to watch the polls. I need you to show up and watch the counting. We need to hold these people accountable, and we need to pay attention to what's going on. So please get out, get the vote done, invite your friends, make a day of it, have a picnic, make a thing out of it, because it is important. You are important. So go to the polls and vote.
All right, we're back. Tom Trento, your host here on 9:20 a.m. The Answer out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're broadcasting on WGKA-AM. We've been doing this for a couple of months now. As many of you know, I direct an organization out of Florida called The United West, and we had a 2-year campaign. The campaign was simply to mobilize in Florida 1,000,001 additional evangelical Christians to vote for Donald Trump on November 3rd, 2020. We did that because we saw in 2018, there were 2 gubernatorial races, one in Georgia, one in Florida. In Florida, Ron DeSantis, who's the governor now, was running against Andrew Gillum. And in Georgia, Brian Kemp was running against Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams, we're going to find out more about her in this segment, who I think she still thinks she's the governor. She lost by a very narrow margin. And in Florida, 8.5 million votes cast, Ron DeSantis beat Andrew Gillum, you're going to learn more about him too, by a mere 31,000 votes. And Trump had only won by 112,000 in 2016. So normally we chase jihadis and Marxists at the United West, but we decided to mobilize people to vote. We did it very successfully. Donald Trump won by 500,000 votes, which is a lot out of 11 million votes cast. And we were patting ourselves on the back. We did that with many other groups. And then we looked to the north, and our sister state to the north is ground zero. So now I have 2 experts with me today, Kevin Jackson of the Blacksphere and Trevor Loudon You can go to trevorloudon.com, and he put Key Wiki together. He's a prolific author, all of that. I left off last segment telling you guys we're going to play a couple of clips. I want you to listen to this, and I want you to guess, and you'll be able to guess, but I want you to give the audience, the listeners, the voters of Atlanta, of Georgia, some insight into what this means. And it happened in 2016 when somebody died. And here we go. It is the Reverend Raphael Warnock doing a eulogy at Ebenezer Baptist Church for somebody.
We remember Fidel Castro, whose legacy is complex. Don't let anybody tell you a simple story. Life usually isn't very simple. His legacy is complex. Kind of like America's legacy is complex. While we focus on political prisoners in Cuba, you saw the folks standing here this morning. If some people get slapped on the hand for the same crime and others go to federal prison, then we too have our own political prisoners. Because politics, more than the crime, politics of race and class, that in that sense, many of us have sisters and brothers who are political prisoners. We're about to pray to a man who was a political prisoner.
All right, Kevin Jackson, you're an African American. You're sitting that day at Ebenezer Baptist Church. You're a Christian.
Now, I just have to interject something here real quick, Tom. Now you realize that the music's being played in the background. It's nice, soft piano music, little drum riffs on the hits, like what's in that video, if you notice. So it's a real comfortable, like, little barroom scene, and
yeah, you're sitting there. Yeah, you came to church to see what's going on, and you hear your minister start saying that stuff. But put yourself in the position of someone in his congregation. What's going through their heart and through their mind?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not an African American. I'm just black, happen to be American who's black. But first of all, a church that's talking about Castro is not a church. Castro has no bearing on anything that's happening in Ebenezer Church in Georgia. It has no impact on their lives. Nothing. I mean, I can't even describe for you how incensed I would be sitting there. But guess what? That's the type of thing that these people eat up, because he takes that lesson and he says, yeah, we've got these political prisoners. America is born on racism. They believe that there is institutional racism, and therefore they need to implement this black theology. And what black theology is, in a nutshell, is abject black racism in your face that they dare you to push back on if you're anything black, particularly non-black, particularly if you're white. And it's critical race theory that essentially proposes that if you're born white, you're born with an advantage. And if you're born black, you're born oppressed. Now, I would ask them to apply that to the NFL, the players in the NFL. If I started naming prominent blacks who are successful in America right now, Trevor wouldn't even get a word in. I could finish your show. But that's the stuff that they teach. And so they're teaching that blacks who have gotten themselves mixed up in the criminal justice system, and some have been mistreated. They have gotten bad cases for drugs and things like that. But it's not limited to blacks. Other people have as well. But they try to stylize this message as if it is only applying to black folks. And so you can lament the death of a guy who's a hero to this man, that being Castro, because he understood political prisoners and political freedom. Now, he doesn't tell these people that Castro political prisoners in jail and things like this as well. So it's an insult to the black community. because the overwhelming blacks in this country earned everything that they got. I liken this applying critical race theory to Usain Bolt. Do you think Usain Bolt ever looked at a white guy on the track and went, holy crap, I got to run against this Swede? He never said that because he knew he was going to win. And he didn't care if you were black, white, Latino, or whatever. He knew he was the best sprinter in the world. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, all these guys, pick your sport, pick your black player. They deal in excellence and meritocracy. But what these guys sell, I call them race pimps in my book, Race Pimping. They sell the idea that you cannot get ahead in America unless we topple this system, this, quote, white male patriarchy that exists. But go anywhere in the world, Tom, and where there's black leaders, and ask yourself, would you want to live in any country in Africa? Would you want to live in any country where the white system has been toppled? And the short answer is no. And by the way, this is what blacks would be saying too.
Yeah, I love the analogy or the question or the challenge. Would you want to live in this country with these black leaders? You guys know we do a lot of work on the Islamic issue. When I get in conversations with Muslims who, we got to change America, we hate America, racist Israel, all this stuff, I'll say, well, okay, then tell me of the 56 countries, which one is exhibiting Islam the way it should be, and why you're not living there? Why aren't you living? And they all shut their mouths and all of this nonsense. Look, Trevor, we're coming down to the end of this segment, but I want to get your insight. We've got about a minute for your insight. Then we're going to roll out another video of Calvin Butts. I think that's Calvin Butts, the next one. And then I want you to comment on Calvin Butts and then bring these guys together as you did in the opening so that the good people of Georgia can understand. We're warning. We're sending a shot over their bow. We're warning. Trevor, give us a minute or so on Castro's eulogy.
Well, look, Castro is an ally of Communist China. Cuba is an ally of Communist China. So the Communist China and Iran and Cuba and Venezuela all work together in this election to manipulate the vote, to help to cheat, and also to manipulate minority populations to vote for Joe Biden. Not because they love minority populations, because they want to destroy Trump so that China becomes the dominant force in the world. And China is probably one of the most racist countries the world has ever seen. So this is a classic case of manipulating people to vote completely against their own interests.
Yeah, it is shocking to me, gentlemen. We got a couple of days, particularly in Georgia, particularly in Fulton County, right here in Atlanta, where we're broadcasting. Big election coming up. I have two experts that have been on for the past couple of segments. We're going to look at Calvin Butts in a moment, who has a relationship to one of the guys running for the U.S. Senate, Raphael Warnock. We're going to deconstruct that whole situation and send out an alert for anyone considering voting for Warnock and Ossoff, too. They're basically two sides of the same coin. And Trevor Loudon, I want to ask you in the next segment where Stacey Abrams fits into the relationship with Ossoff and Warnock. And then going a step back, where Steve Phillips, many don't know him, where he may fit into this whole puzzle. So, gentlemen, stay with me. And all of our listeners, hang in there. We're going to take a little break right now. Tom Trento, your host. Tom Trento, your host here on AM 920, The Answer in Atlanta, Georgia. Day after New Year's, couple of days until the election. I got two great guys, two friends, two experts here. We're talking about the election. We're trying to alert people to what's going on. If you're just tuning in, we have Trevor Loudon, expert on political philosophy, socialism, Marxism, all of these isms. And, of course, our friend Kevin Jackson of the Blacksphere, prolific writer, talk show host regularly every day of the week or weekdays. Kevin, what we need to do is to, I want you to give a clarion call, a warning, a message. Take a moment or two to the good folks of Georgia And lay it out on the table, man, what they need to do and what the implications are if they don't. And, let's hear what you have to say to the folks of Georgia.
Well, Warnock is the guy both Warnock and Ossoff are of the same fabric. Ossoff is obviously just this rich silver spoon white kid. But I would say to the folks following Warnock and who believe in this silly philosophy, the very people that call me a sellout, and I'm going to clean it up for radio, a coon butt Negro, they're really the same. That's exactly what they are. They're the sellouts. They're too chicken to tell Warnock that what he's been doing, this race pimping, selling the black people down the river for decades, is absolutely the wrong thing to do. They've demoralized the generation of blacks. They've demoralized anywhere they live. It is a cancer rotting at its core. And they can criticize people like me all they want, but they know in their hearts that people like Warnock are nothing but cancers. They bring nothing but devastation and despair. It doesn't matter. Pick your city. Right now we're talking about Georgia, chiefly the Atlanta area, because that's how they rally. That's how they get everybody behind this stuff. And the fact is, they've done nothing for the black community. There is nothing the Democratic Party's done for the black community. There's nothing any of these race pimps, and they exist in every city, has done for the black community, and they never will do anything for the black community. And ultimately, I think Trevor mentioned this early on, what happens in the very end, if the Chinese communists were to get their way, or any group were to get their way, black people would be subservient as they've been in practically every culture where we've existed. Because that's what communism brings, is devastation and despair. So they better quit listening to Warnock and the leftists. They better go out and do what I think many millions did on behalf of President Trump before the election. And they better bring in a new year with the Republicans and hope that they can keep the Senate in Republican hands.
All right, Kevin, before you go, Mark ran out of the control room. He has one question for you. Mark, go ahead.
Well, I know studying Warlock and Cone and the whole liberation theology movement, I should say black liberation theology movement, it's really centered on your blackness first, and however we can make that fit into Scripture. Like one of the primary examples they'd use is Jesus wasn't white, he was black, and he wasn't crucified, he was lynched. And so they have to portray this victim mentality to make it seem like all white people caused Jesus to get lynched. Is that a prevalent, attitude throughout the black community that you have found, or is this just like in this crazy, liberation theology movement?
No, it applies. I mean, look at what happens right now. We've got 3% of the population, black teens between a certain age, 17 to 25, that commit roughly 50% of the violent crimes in America. But if you bring that up with respect to defending the police, they say, oh, you can't bring up black on black crime. You can't bring up that type of crime. You can't bring up police brutality. You can't bring up profiling. You can't bring up any of that in discussing this. Well, that's black liberation theology. Effectively, they say, we need to commit these crimes. We go out and do these things because we are oppressed. We've been oppressed over a certain number of years. They're talking about not having us wear masks, even though supposedly we get more sick from the Wu flu than anybody else. It's always something to allow blacks to have bad behaviors. I'll leave the audience with this. I work a lot with the Jewish community, and I was with a group of very powerful Jewish men, and I was telling them, I said, as Jewish people, as a culture, you've done amazing things. I mean, the number of Nobel laureates, the number of, economists, physicists, you name it, Nobel Peace Prize is astronomical. What the Jews have done in terms of technology and given to the world, and water treatment and things like this. It's literally mind blowing what a very small group of people have done. And I said, yet everywhere you go, you find anti-Semitism. But black folks, we are the most, we commit more crimes than anybody per capita. We don't, as a culture, and I don't care if anybody gets mad at me for saying this, we don't have a whole lot we're bringing to the party that is good. But go around the world, as I have, and you will see Thug Life T-shirts. You will have people with grills. I've been in Japan. I lived in China, all over the world, France, Europe, everywhere. They got Thug Life T-shirts with all of our thugs. They know who George Floyd is. They know who Michael Brown Jr. is. And I said to these very powerful Jewish men, I said, you can't sell the best of your culture and we can sell the worst of ours. You should be asking yourself why that can occur. So I'll leave the audience to think about that.
That's a thought provoker. Hey, Kevin Jackson, well, the Blacksphere, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Go to the kevinjacksonnetwork.com and everything is about me is there.
God bless you. You're doing the Lord's work, and we'll be in touch.
Take care, guys.
All right. Kevin Jackson with us. But now, Trevor, well, before we, because you're going to be with us another segment, we'll play the piece. I want you to comment and give some insight into the milieu that Kevin just created for the Black community, particularly from the viewpoint of how the Chinese communists can exploit that sort of thinking.
What Kevin is saying is this: that the victim mentality that is common amongst Black communities has been created over 50, 60, 80 years by the American communist movement. And it's not to uplift the Black community. You know, before the civil rights, before the Great Society of Lyndon Johnson, Black communities had lower divorce rates, lower illegitimacy rates, and higher church-going rates than the white community. But the socialist Lyndon Johnson came along and put everybody on welfare and replaced the Black father with the state. And the socialists have been exploiting the chaos. The Marxists have been exploiting the chaos ever since to create a big population that votes reliably for the Democratic Party, which the Marxists now control. It's a classic case of manipulating a whole population to implement a communist agenda by playing on victimhood. That's what it's all about.
And if you were able to, and you are by the magic of radio here, if you were able to sit down with a thinking, a Black person who isn't just listening to Warnock and whatever he says, they'll mindlessly follow, but they were there when he eulogized Castro, and they go, this doesn't seem right, and they're thinking, and they turned to you and said, help me clarify my thinking. I want to have an association with my Black brothers and sisters, and I do think we need liberation from social injustice. Why should I vote for a Republican? They're rich white people.
Well, really, and the Republican Party partially is rich white people, but it's also increasingly a lot of Hispanic people. What the Republican Party represents or should represent is the idea of the Constitution, that all people are created equal, that everybody has opportunity, that everybody is treated equally under the law. And if you want to start out and make yourself a whole bunch of money, good for you. We won't tax you too much. We'll support you in what you're doing. That's the idea. And every American should be supporting that. Every American should be buying into that idea. The Democratic Party basically tells you that you cannot make it on your own, that you need the government to help you and look after you. And by the way, part of the deal is you have to give up all your freedom. We will give you a pittance. We will give you little handouts here and there as long as you give up your freedom and vote for us all the time. That's the deal. So if I want to be a man, I want to stand up and live my life and provide for my family and look after my people without the government in the way or giving me handouts. I want to stand on my own. That's the competing vision you got here. You want to be a slave to the state or you want to be a free man. And the Black population has been fighting to be free for over 100 years. And it's not the time to vote yourself back into slavery, that's for sure.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you have to listen with your head and your heart to what Trevor Loudon just laid out.
What a great summary. Yeah.
He laid out the distinction between the two parties, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party. One, as Kevin Jackson would have said, is in bondage, a Democrat, and Trevor laid out the Republican Party as an opportunity for you to advance to the degree you think you're capable, to the degree you want. Trevor, hang with us. We want to get into Calvin Butts and Stacey Abrams and Steve Phillips. But right now, we got to take a short break. Tom Trento on AM 920. The Answer. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, I'm Sam Sorbo, and I have a message for Georgians, particularly Christians. Christians vote their values, folks. And I want you Georgians to vote your values and not your skin color. Remember, Martin Luther King said,
I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
We need Georgia. We need you guys. So please vote for the content of character, not the color of a person's skin.
Tom Trento, your host here on AM 920, The Answer in Atlanta, Georgia, day after New Year's. We're here in our last segment. Man, time flies when you're having fun. WGKA AM, this is Salem Network. And as many of you know who have been listening, at 4 to 5, every Saturday for the past 2 months, we follow Dennis Prager. My organization, the United West, we have secured this time to bring to you any expertise that we had in Florida where we helped Donald Trump win in Florida significantly. We're bringing that to Georgia through a ground game, through advertising, through video production, and through this radio station right now. We've been bringing world-class experts. Last week we had John Voight, Sam Sorbo with serious messages to Christians. Today we have had Kevin Jackson of the Blacksphere, and still with us is Trevor Loudon. Trevor's going to comment on Stacey Abrams, Steve Phillips, Calvin Butts. We're going to play a little piece from Calvin Butts. You may not know who he is, but if you're even considering voting for Raphael Warnock, you must know who Calvin Butts is. So take a listen.
Those who ask the question, why would we welcome Fidel Castro tonight? We answer, it is in our tradition to welcome those who are visionary, who are revolutionary. In the year 1984, Dr. James Cone, the father of liberation theology, led a delegation of theological scholars to a conference in Cuba. There we had the privilege of meeting with Cuban scholars to talk about liberation theology and the revolution. While we were there, the president of Cuba, Fidel Castro, welcomed us with open arms. He allowed us to tour the entire island of Cuba. He allowed us to move freely through the streets, in the hotels, in the schools, to talk with the citizens and the children and the seniors. There we could witness and judge for ourselves the power of the revolution. When we discovered that we had been there, time moved so quickly, 3 or 4 days, Jesse Jackson showed up. Jesse was there, and the president of Cuba, Fidel Castro, welcomed him, even smoked a cigar with him. And then Jesse preached a sermon, and Jesse Jackson said, the island belongs to God. The water around the island belongs to God. And he was looking at the president. He said, the people belong to God. I got nervous. I said, Jesse, take it easy. But the president listened, and then he spoke with power. And you could see that the people of Cuba bonded with him. We have one of the great leaders of the world with us today. And so therefore, beloved, God bless you. Welcome to the Abyssinian Baptist Church, where we believe in truth and in justice and equality, and where we join with you in saying, Cuba yes, blockade no.
All right, now they go into Fidel. on and on. For our listening audience, you're listening to the Reverend Calvin Butts, 1995. Fidel was at the UN, and they allowed him to go within 25 miles of the UN, and he was invited by the Abyssinian church where Calvin Butts was the pastor. Hey, Trevor Loudon, wasn't somebody else in that church at that time that maybe has something to do with running for the Senate in Georgia?
Yeah, Raphael Warnock was the youth pastor of that church at that time, and he's a long-time protege of Calvin Butts. They're very good friends. They promoted each other's careers. He is Raphael Warnock is the product of Calvin Butts, essentially.
Now, Calvin Butts seemed to be praising Fidel Castro. In 1984, Ronald Reagan's the president. He let us in his country. He served us coffee. He showed us the beaches. He did all of this. He's an apologist par excellence. How does Steve Phillips and Stacey Abrams come into this whole mix with Raphael Warnock?
Steve Phillips was a young black law student at Stanford University in the 80s. He was a member of a pro-Chinese Communist Party called the League of Revolutionary Struggle. These guys backed Communist China. And he was part of, but after college, he married into a very, very rich Jewish family from San Francisco, got himself a $2.2 billion fortune. And he's been using that money to elect socialist candidates of color, left-wing communist candidates of color, basically mainly in the South, with the goal of destroying the Republican Party in the South so the Democrats can become a one-party state nationally. Now, Stacey Abrams is his protege.
Trevor, you said the magic word. When you say Stacey Abrams, things pop up on our monitor here. We're going to let you listen to a conversation between who you're talking about, Steve Phillips and Stacey Abrams. This was in 2015 as Donald Trump was running, and Stacey was involved in securing voters in Georgia. Listen to this and then complete your story on Stacey and Steve.
We are exactly what Brown is the New White is telling you. It is a combination of progressive whites, Latino, African American, Asian Americans who, when given the ability to vote for the candidate of their choice and knowing about the election, they will vote the right way every single time and we win.
And that really is why I wanted Stacey to be part of this conversation, is that quite literally I feel the work that she's doing is a manifestation of the concepts that we're actually talking about, and that Georgia as a state represents the potential of what the country, the direction that it should be moving in. You have to identify and validate and shine a spotlight on the people who will be the leaders of this new American majority. And I really do believe that Stacey and people like Stacey represent the future of the country in terms of the kinds of leadership coming out of these communities and having a vision and the strategy and the commitment to make America better. So thank you for being part of this.
That's 5 years ago, Trevor. That was 5 years ago. Get us up to speed on Stacey, Steve, and Warnock.
Steve Phillips sounds quite a moderate there, but the guy is an extreme communist and believes, basically supports communist China. And his philosophy is this: what you do, you've got the black population, which is locked in Democrat. You know, you can take them for granted, they're locked in Democrat. You add the Latinos, who are lean Democrat, the Asians who lean Democrat, and you couple them with the progressive whites and the Muslims who lean Democrat, and you have a majority. So what he's all about is running far left communist candidates of color in the southern states and bringing together this majority, the progressive whites, the hardcore leftist whites, the black population, which they take for granted, you know, because it votes 90% Democrat, then the Asians, then the Latinos, then the Muslims, etc. And that's your winning majority. That's how Steve Phillips, with his money, behind Stacey Abrams, almost won the governorship of Georgia in 2018, and they almost did the same with the Marxist Andrew Gillum in Florida the same year. And now Steve Phillips and his friends are pouring millions of dollars into Georgia to flip the states. And this is what Steve Phillips said the other day. He said, when we win, we are going to reform the Supreme Court, which means they're going to put 4 more judges on the Supreme Court, all Marxists, so there is never so they can completely control the Supreme Court. Then we're going to give statehood to Washington, D.C., because that will give us 2 more senators who will be hardcore leftists, which means they will have the majority in the Senate forever. So what he's talking about is a Marxist takeover of America by using Stacey Abrams, Raphael Warnock, and manipulating the black and Latino populations of Georgia and other southern states to bring that about.
Unbelievable. All right, we got about a minute left. Mark has a comment, and then I want Trevor to have time to give a little challenge out to folks.
I just want to tell everybody, the man you're listening to right here, Trevor Loudon, has educated a lot of people in this. He's the expert at this communism things. And you go to trevorloudon.com, look up the Rainbow Conspiracy, and you'll see how Stephen Phillips is the gatekeeper for all the Soros types money down through it. He's the one who directs it via the Jesse Jackson Rainbow Coalition strategy. He wrote a book, Brown is the New White. But Trevor, you're an absolute brilliant man. And anybody, trevorloudon.com, trevorloudon.com.
Trevor, why don't you take 30 seconds, because we're at the end of the show. Your concluding thoughts.
Yeah, look, this is the choice for Georgians. You get to decide where America becomes subservient to communist China, or where America stands free and independent, and whether you become the slave of a one-party democratic state, or whether you can strike your own destiny, control your own life, provide for your own family, and be an independent, responsible human being. That's the choice in this election.
And what a way to end the show. Ladies and gentlemen, January 2nd, Saturday, 2021. So get out and vote for Kelly Loeffler and vote for David Perdue. Tom Trento, we'll see you next Saturday. Take care. AM 920, The Answer.